Have to make sure it's muted. Yep. All right. I believe we can begin anytime you'd like, Mayor Mahovy.
All right, let's call to order this special meeting of the Bishop City Council for March 19th, 2021, and it is exactly 1 p.m. Robin, would you like to lead us in the pledge?
Sure. Everyone will stand, please, and face your nearest flag. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thanks. Can we have roll call, please?
Councilmember Kong?
Here.
Councilmember Garcia?
Here.
Councilmember Ellis?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Schwartz?
Here.
Mayor Mahovy?
Here.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to public comment. A notice to the public. This time is set aside to receive public comment on matters not calendared on the agenda. When recognized, please state your name and address for the record, and please limit your comments to 3 minutes. Under California law, the City Council is prohibited from generally discussing or taking action on items not included on the agenda. However, we may briefly respond to comments or questions from members of the public. So we will definitely listen, but we will generally not discuss the matter or take action on it. Robin, do we have any public comment?
There are no public comments on our public comment email. Jenny, I don't see any raised hands. Can you
There are
confirm?
no raised hands.
Thank you. Elaine, thanks for joining us.
Okay, moving on to strategic planning discussion. Council to discuss, identify, and prioritize the City of Bishop's work efforts, future projects, vision, and mission. Administration. So do you want to start out, Ron?
Sure. We sent out to you the City Council priorities from last year's strategic planning meeting. And then another sheet on my recommendations of proposed uses for the 1% sales tax revenue that will be starting to come in. Well, at least we'll be starting to collect it April 1st. It won't start to come in until June. I thought we'd talk about the priorities from last year first and see how those stack up with this council and this year after a year of pandemic. Stephen, would you like for us to put that up on a shared screen, or do you all have a copy in front of you?
I can put it up. Can I actually share my screen or no?
I think we can allow you to. Oh, there you go.
What are we looking at?
That's it.
This is it from last year?
Yes.
Okay.
So housing was by far the top priority with 13 votes. Votes were, we did used the dots, if you recall, the colored dots to determine how much support there was for each item. And we've been holding meetings occasionally with LADWP on possibility of acquiring some of their land for future housing. We worked closely with IMACA on the purchase of the Silver Peaks property, which is now accomplished. That actually, the city had to buy that from LADWP, and then immediately IMACA and their proposed developer bought it from the city. So it was a multi-entity transaction, but it happened very quickly. So that's done and that's accomplished. Vacant property tax or fee is had 4 dots on it, and the council has adopted the nuisance ordinance. Broadband internet access was one of the higher ones, and that they really haven't done much on that this year. More walkable Main Street pedestrian crossings. We're working with Caltrans on that issue, and 2 crossings now, as you know, are planned for improvements. Mandatory truck route. Not much is done so far, but I think we need to continue to hold that up in front of Caltrans and see if eventually something there can happen. Flavored tobacco or vaping. We're at this point kind of following Inyo County's lead. And I have a message into Inyo County staff on where they are when they may plan to bring that before the Board of Supervisors, and I don't have that information yet. The sign ordinance is being updated as a part of the downtown strategic plan. Redevelopment of small Kmart. Elaine and Destin and I continue to work on that, and I included in my activity report to you today that I sent late this morning some interesting developments that happened recently on the possibility of IMACA's veterans housing and the Wounded Warrior Project combining, and the small Kmart is one of the sites that they're looking at. And I think that's something we need to really focus on. Certainly the staff will be focusing on it, and Karen Kahn has been involved as well and directly talking to the owner of Kmart property. Strategic plan for city facilities. Chief Dell and I are working on getting the fire department strategic plan started soon. So that, I think the fire department facilities and equipment are a very high priority there. And then the last one was the strategic parking plan. The downtown plan that I mentioned earlier will include parking standards for new development and possibly recommendations like wayfinding signage, but we don't have a overall parking plan in the mix yet. And then there were some projects that were high priorities. The fire department, police department, city hall, combining with the Superior Court is on the back burner now due to COVID, and the state has really pulled away from that, the idea of building Superior Court facilities. So that's certainly on our mind, but is not real active at this point. We've learned recently, just in the last few days, that Congress is actually reinstating a process for funding projects, which is commonly referred to as earmarks. So Mayor Mahovey and I yesterday talked briefly about perhaps sending our member of Congress a letter suggesting this type of a project, along with possibly a recreation center. Again, the fire department strategic plan is almost ready to begin. And there will be on Monday's council meeting, There will be a public hearing and an ordinance recommended by Chief Dell for updating the city ordinances related to the fire department, that it's really a first step in this process. Canine fundraising. I think this was an idea that was brought by one council member for the police department, but I don't recall much about it. And then the pedestrian safety, the front west of the park. Destin has told me he plans to include that project in the next fiscal year budget. So that's a review of last year, and Mayor Mohove, if you and the council members want to discuss these and see if there's some that you want to take away, if there's some you want to add. The next sheet that we'll talk about are priorities for the revenue from the 1% sales tax increase. And I think that's very related, but kind of a separate issue.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, am I on mute? No. Okay. I think that seems reasonable. I mean, if we all remember last year, we did this strategic planning meeting in February, right after Ron got here. And then the very next month, we were hit with a pandemic. So I'm actually pleased to see we made some progress on some of these items. I don't necessarily foresee that they'll all go away, but I think maybe the approach we should take is, yeah, let's go through and discuss these particular items, and then maybe also just throw out any council member ideas for other aspects of how we want to direct our staff to fulfill the needs of our residents this year. And then maybe we'll put that on another sheet and go through and have the council members kind of rank them. What do you guys think of that idea? It's kind of weird doing this not in person without the dots, but we could do it. Does that seem reasonable with you guys?
Yeah, I was wondering if we could maybe group some of these bulleted numbers into like the major goals that we've set for ourselves. You know, like housing is such a goal, whereas like broadband internet access to me seems like a tactic to achieve the goal of economic development. So I kind of feel like we don't have, some of these are like tactics and some of these are goals. And it would be nice if we could define them a bit, because with housing, I mean, the only thing, you know, Silver Peaks has been great, but aside from that, it's just been conversations with DWP. So I feel like we might need some more tactics to achieve our goals that are more defined, similar to like, you know, pedestrian safety. Like we don't have anything like that under housing of like, what is a definitive thing we are doing to achieving that goal of accessing more housing for our constituents?
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. Yeah, I guess we could take a step back and just say like, all right, what are the main topics that we want to focus on? And I'm really glad that you brought up economic development, because I would actually rank that pretty highly. So maybe we should just start out with going around the room, and everybody names a topic that we should all be focusing on, and then we'll just circle around from all the council members, and then start actually talking about what it is we want to see in those, and how what are the tactics that we want to do within there. Does that seem reasonable?
Sounds good to me.
Okay. Let's start with then you guys. Now I'm just sharing a blank document. Does that still register for people? All right. Karen, kick us off since you're unmuted. What's one of the goals?
Well, housing, is a huge priority, but I would like to see us come up with some more strategies in obtaining more housing in addition to talking to DWP. So potentially looking at a maybe fund that we could create that would then help us maybe partner with developers. I don't know what all the options are that are out there, but I feel like there are potential properties that maybe the city could identify and purchase and then turn it over to a developer. I'm sure the state of California probably has programs, but I think other than just hoping for land being released as a means to increasing our housing is not the fastest way we can solve this problem. So I don't know what all the strategies are, but I would like to identify strategies that we could use as a means to achieving that goal.
Mm-hmm.
Could
Do we want to have a discussion about that now before we move on to a next topic, or what do you guys think? Because, yeah, I completely agree with you. And I do think that'll definitely come out in one of the stuff that we want to do with regards to the increased revenue that we're going to get from sales tax. And I would personally love to set aside some of those funds for a nebulous but broad category housing fund. And some of those funds I would advocate could be used for first-time homebuyer programs to help build more of a community in town. I would also advocate, as we start setting aside funds in there, those funds can be used exactly for that purpose to purchase land from DWP, but also look at other parcels that can be purchased for housing. But one of the things that I would say with that is to be able to do that second part of partnering with private entities to do development, we have to know what the inventory is. So we have to have a list of properties. Jim?
Yeah, I like where Karen went with this. I think we have to make real strategic moves. I know I've talked to Elaine quite a bit. The properties do come, as they do come up, we need to, whether or not it's part of the 1%, which doesn't go that super far as property purchases. But in the past, I know Jim Tatum, to put our parks in, or our restrooms in, borrowed money from the county at relatively low rates. As we see properties, I think we have to be a little more aggressive. I completely agree with Karen there that waiting for DWP to come through and to get housing, the problem's going to be compounded even greater by the time we get to that point. But if we identify properties, borrow the money through, research part of the strategic move that we're talking about, it sounds great on paper, but what are our how do we do it, is find funding sources, whether they're private funding sources, government funding sources, county funding sources. Find true funding sources. If we have to make an investment, make some payments on property, we do it, we flip it, and we get it into someone who can do something with it. Along the same lines as this discussion, I think we somehow need to jumpstart the mixed use zoning. We have a bunch of buildings downtown that don't meet Code 1. How do we get those flipped over to developers? And with an incentive, or how we do it, but that's great. Put in a retail store, but let's see 4 apartment buildings do, 2 apartment buildings, 3, and start jumpstarting the building. I don't know what we can do as a city. I don't know if we've identified what we can give breaks here and there on a permit fee and some of that, but is that really enough to jumpstart it? So that would be, because I think it ties in what you said, Stephen, the economic development. It has to be multifaceted. We can't just say we need more housing. We need more, there has to be a thing. And it all, looking at our list here, all of it ties in. Without great internet, you don't have great reason for businesses to come here. You don't have people who want to move here to work remotely. So there's a bunch of elements. I think we're getting there, but I agree with Karen. We need to get, instead of bullet points, put down what do we need to do to accomplish those bullet points. So there you go.
Those are good points. I mean that I think obviously one of the other big items that we want to focus on is economic development, right? Another broad topic. What's another broad topic? I would actually say something along the lines of community services to increase our offerings.
You know, and I don't know where this fits in, but mobility seems to be a constant, you know, that goes in with, you know, a truck route, but there's also like safe routes to schools. I feel like our mobility is, you know, hinders us more than we might even know. It's, you know, doesn't feel safe to have kids, you know, crossing Main Street. You know, I just feel like we do have some serious mobility issues. And if we could tackle them, you know, that would then help with, I don't know if it'd help with housing, but I just feel like we have a serious mobility issue. You know, you get concerns from parents once they start having kids going to school. You get emails, wait, how do you safely get to school? And the traffic around the school, we all know it's not a good flow. So I don't know, you know, what we can do about that, but it's an issue.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I would actually say that falls, obviously, Elaine, correct me if I'm wrong, but that falls under planning.
Yeah, I guess you're right. It would be planning for sure.
In particular, yeah, traffic calming and pedestrian safety. And so actually having a clear plan of what it is we could do to achieve those goals and then actually move towards those. Elaine, isn't that part of like what comes in the general plan and what would be a part of the specific plan? Uh-oh. I can't hear you at all. I think your mic is messed up because it's very staticky. They're just calling in. While she's calling in, Jose, did you have any other broad topic that you think would be part of the visioning?
Before I get to broad topics,
Sure.
I'd like to mention that relating to housing and economic development and the mobility, a lot of things tied together. With the additional tax revenue, those funds that we can put aside to incentivize housing, more housing within the city limits, I think besides identifying the properties that can be developed and bringing buildings up to code, and as you said, Stephen, promoting the first-time homeowner. I think providing low interest rate loans for those property owners that have an old building that they would like to use, convert to the mixed zoning use, have it commercial, residential. I think that is going to promote, to bring in more housing and also incentivize the economy by improving our businesses. So that's something else we can do there. Yes, we should not just think that we can just depend on DWP releasing land. There is land, yes, but there are also a lot of buildings that we can bring into the mixed zoning use. As far as the community services, yeah, I like to see the city providing more services to the community. In the mobility aspect, we of course we like to have a truck route that will promote or allow for Main Street to be more pedestrian friendly, maybe even more parking. We used to have parking on Main Street maybe 30 years ago or more. And I'm not saying that we should, but maybe if it's possible, having a sidewalk on every street within the city limits. Because if we want people to come to visit us and walk around our town, if we want to provide safety to our residents, we need to take them off the pavement. There are many streets within the city limits where people have to walk next to vehicles because there is no sidewalk. We need to have a sidewalk on every street, and we need to work on that. The sooner we started working on it, the better it's going to be in every way. The city is going to look better. It's going to attract more people. They can walk anywhere they want to, not just on Main Street. So a lot of things tie together, and of course the broadband internet access, they will attract people to come to move to Bishop, to work in Bishop. So, and as far as community services, I like to see our Parks and Rec coming up with more activities for not only for children, but for all adults. And what about seniors? We should have a variety of activities for all of our residents. Whether we work with the schools or we work with senior center in the back of the park with the county. But we need to have more services, and we need to work on improving our infrastructure, our cities, our streets, our sidewalks. Yes, we need to have the more parking, but we have a lot of more issues that we should focus on.
I mean, that seems, I don't hear anybody, I don't see anybody nodding their head no.
Good, thank you. I don't see everybody.
Karen, Kong, you've been quiet.
I know, how
Surprisingly.
strange. Well, I love to say that I agree with Karen, so that's always great. You know, I think that it's kind of, it could be worked either way. Obviously, a lot of the same things we need to do for housing are also needed for general economic development. And so in those ways, I think what we definitely need to build a nice infrastructure of what all the buildings are, who owns them all of those pieces. I've been racking my brain about Grove Street, trying to figure out who that person is. And I think this is a time that we really could bring in some of the realtors just to get an idea as to how they could help us, because they, in theory, they have the connections that we don't have, plus they have their other bodies involved that, not just the one or two that we have access to. As far as community services, I would really like to see a way that we could figure out some pool stuff. I know that Ron is shaking his head right now, even though I can't see him, because the pool is never a moneymaker. But I was talking to physical therapy, and they would love to figure out a way that the hospital could get a grant and do some upgrades so that they could use the pool for physical therapy. So I would like to, sort of see what we could do in that neck of the woods, both for the people who need it, physical therapy, as well as for the rest of the community. As far as mobility is concerned and planning, I think one of the most problematic things that we have for tourists is the lack of concrete signage as to where things are and which way to go and how to find things. We're a small place. I shouldn't have to be, everyone shouldn't have to be giving so many directions and for lost people for figuring out which way to go. And so I know that signage is part of the downtown specific plan, and I don't know if there's a way we can partner with the forest or BLM or DWP and figure out a way to have some signage in to point out those other places that people want to go that they get to by coming to us. And if there's a way we could shore up our signage policy as far as size and materials and things prior to the downtown specific plan, or if that's just going to mess things up too much. As far as infrastructure is concerned, I'm still concerned about the cleanliness of our sidewalks and whose responsibility that is, and how we're going to get them to look in such a way that people are not, grimacing as they step over things and stuff and sticks. So those are kind of my things that pop out at me today.
That's a great list. I want to comment on a few of those things, if we may. Actually, when you were mentioning the pool, you thought Ron would be shaking his head. The person who's actually shaking his head at the physical therapy idea with that is would be Dan. I don't know if Dan's actually on, but Dan, would you like to explain to everyone there what you explained to me about having a physical therapy pool?
Sure. Can you hear me okay, Stephen?
We can, yeah.
So the issue that arises with the therapy pool, we've tried to work around it in the past. A lot of people like to model us after Gardnerville, and the way that their therapy pool is set up, and I visited their facility to gain some information on it. But really, the way that it works is that pool is to run at a certain temperature. It's so hard, and then our pool needs to operate at a certain temperature. So it's hard to have like a physical therapy session like in a morning and then turn our pool around to have it to be 78 degrees for our swimmers. That's kind of the hurdle that we need to jump through. The other issue with therapy pool is having the access, which includes ramps and modifications to make that happen. I'm not saying it can't happen. It's just something, it's a hurdle that we need to get over. The way that Gardnerville got around it was they basically passed a measure or a tax to their residents who desired the therapy pool. And basically that's how they paid for their therapy pool. Their therapy pool is for therapy only. They can't be really utilized for anything else because of the difference in temperature. So if that makes sense, that's what I got. So,
right.
And perhaps we could encourage them to find a grant that's large enough to build a therapy pool adjacent to our pool and enclose them, but keep them
Well,
separate.
Yeah, and all I was thinking was that it could be on the list of things that we see if it's possible. You know, I was in no way implying that it would be an easy fix to do, just that I've been reached out to numerous times from people who are interested in that. So,
And I
Hey,
mean,
if we can get a therapy pool next to our pool, I'm 100% in. I love maintaining pools, so bring it.
thanks.
the only thing he loves maintaining more than pools is grass.
I'm a nerd like that. Enjoy it.
No, we definitely appreciate that. I mean, that I think that definitely touches on one of the things that I would like to see come out of the out of this next year, which is basically finalizing a park master plan. Because that in particular, we could identify what are and maybe actually have like different tiers of, say, cost that would come associated with a park master plan, because we have talked about it'd be great if we could have a rec center, and then what would we want in that rec center, and if and then we could have a different tier, like if we wanted a therapy pool in addition to like an enclosed pool, what is the cost associated with that, and those sorts of things. So, yeah.
Stephen, can I ask Karen Kong a couple of
course.
questions? Just follow up, because I think I may have an idea. As far as sidewalk cleanliness, have you noticed that more of an issue outside of bars, restaurants, or everywhere?
It's pretty much an everywhere issue. I mean, there are some sidewalks that are clean, but generally speaking, up and down Main Street, it's not a pretty sight. And Line Street's not really much better.
Yeah, I agree. And if any of you have ever been to Mexico City and walk anywhere downtown in the morning, you will see that every single business is sweeping and mopping their sidewalk in front of their business, regardless of the type of business that there is. I have an issue with some of our street vendors, food vendors in Bishop, that the sidewalk where they park is full of grease. And I don't know if we can incorporate into the selling or business permit that they have to be responsible for some of the cleaning with this type of businesses. And honestly, I think if we work, I don't think we should mandate that every business in town sweeps and mops their street, their sidewalk every day. But if we work with them, helping them see that the cleaner the sidewalk is in front of their business, the more attractive it's going to be. So I guess if we start talking to them, maybe we can address the issue without spending a lot of money or other resources.
No, those are good points. And I think one of the leaders of the Eastern Sierra Trash people would like to speak. Come on, Jim.
Oh, Stephen, leader. Access. Yeah, it's okay. Hey, Destin, question. Do we clean sidewalks bi-monthly, annually, ever with like pressure washer or anything?
Thank you for asking. I was just waiting my turn. So sidewalks, you know, we clean some things when it's bad, but the sidewalk is the adjacent property owner's responsibility to maintain, as well as the trees and the green belt or whatever it be. Last probably February-ish, I worked out with Caltrans. We the city of Bishop Cruz were going to try to do some early morning cleaning of downtown sidewalks. It was right as COVID hit, and it kind of changed all the plans. But I think it's something we need to bring up with Caltrans, because that is their right of ways, and they have the ability to enforce or what. And I'm not sure. In my career here, all the downtown businesses used to clean their sidewalks. They'd go out and sweep in the morning and hose off, but not anymore.
No.
And
Destin, we can spend a lot of time figuring out who's responsible, who's what, but the reality is it's a look and environment that the city of Bishop, we're going to wear that suit. It's our responsibility. I don't know if we can reach out to DWP and even find out what they have, but I know that Bishop has it, Independence has it. Their towable water tank, probably 500 gallon, with they're high pressure, but they're heated. They use them for the quagga mussel boat thing. But if we could get something similar, work out a lend share program with DWP, and every 2 months or something, cruise down a sidewalk at 5 a.m. and hit them with heat and water and clean them good, would that then incentivize? I guess it would lead the path, maybe, that there comes a point when the business say, screw it, it doesn't make a difference, I can't get them cleaned. If we lead it in between those 2 months, maybe that's there now, they take some pride in it and say, hey, I'm going to keep it clean too, and we keep up on it. So just a thought.
No, and I agree. That was something that's already on my list to try to get back to this summer. We have that sewer cleaning truck with the high pressure not hose on it, and we had it all planned out. We had plywood. We got to protect the windows, but we were going to try to lead the way. We do go down to Main and Line and get all the pigeon poop off the sidewalks down there, because I'm not throwing Caltrans under the bus, but nobody's taking care of it. And you're right, it's us at the end of the day. So we do that in front of some of the bars. We do cleanup for sure. Just probably could do more, and we'll definitely do that.
Dustin,
and I have to say,
Steven, if I may add, I'm sorry, Karen, if I may add something to that cleaning of the sidewalks. If we start working with DWP, Main Street is the right way, but Dustin said, is the business owner responsibility to keep it clean, but they don't do it. What if we create a three-way partnership, city, business owners, Caltrans, and we clean those sidewalks, not every other month, but more often. And like Dustin, like Jim said, maybe if we do it once a month, maybe in between the business owner will do it. And that way our sidewalks are gonna stay a little bit cleaner than how they are right now. Sorry, Karen.
It's okay. I think Jim is absolutely correct. If any of you, I cleaned my son's dorm room college apartment once when they were moving out. And I thought to myself, they didn't clean this toilet once when they were there. And it was almost too much for me to take. And so I feel as if maybe what we need to do is do the best we can do to get it clean and have it be as pretty as possible, because then I think Jim is absolutely right. Then the business owners will be like, oh, it's not completely impossible to get this cleaned. And they'll take more pride in it. That it's really just make it as sparkly as possible so that they want to keep it that way.
Correct.
I mean, and to fold into that, and I think, again, since all of these issues are kind of related to each other, I think if we actually did develop a sidewalk maintenance management plan, or whatever we're going to call it, that I feel like as part of that, we could even address some of Councilwoman Kong's concerns about tourists finding their way around town. Elaine has shared in the past of some towns that did some amazing jobs with kind of wayfinding for tourists by having like the art route, the commercial route, the whatever else route, and they're all color coded, and you can actually work some of that color coding into sidewalks. So that could be an idea.
Mr. Mayor,
Ron? Yeah.
we need to remember that we have a very limited maintenance staff. I'd like to work on partnering also with the Chamber of Commerce. And perhaps they could start an education incentive process of some kind to encourage businesses to do more of this on their own. I think if we all work together, we could accomplish quite a bit, but I hesitate for the city to take on other responsibilities beyond what we have.
And one thing I want to say, just for kind of not defending the business owners, but in 2015, when the drought became such an extreme level that the governor implemented the water conservation rules, that was kind of when they quit doing it, you know, the ones that were, and there was a fair number, but they tried to continue doing it throughout. And then they had citizens complaints coming to us constantly that people are out there cleaning. And the only reason I bring that up is we may be slipping into another one of those eras again, and trying to figure out how to clean these sidewalks are going to be tough without water.
However, if we actually have a tanker that we're filling up to do this, we can do it. Can we do it with brown water from the later ponds of the sewage treatment plant?
We actually, no, not until
No.
we had tertiary treatment. We're only at secondary, so it can't be introduced to the public.
Okay.
Someday.
Another strategy, in addition to just downtown beautification, is some cities have business improvement districts. And so you could get the business owners or the building owners to buy into some sort of improvement district. And then that improvement district works with the city, partners with them to achieve the goals of beautification and, you know, landscaping and just different things like that. So it's not all on the shoulders of the city. And that's just a boilerplate. Many, many cities have business improvement districts.
Is that different than the BTID?
Yes.
Elaine is nodding heavily. Yes. Okay. Oh yeah, because that's a tourist improvement district.
Even if I may say something else, another idea that I like to throw out there, and it relates to everything: economic development, the planning, the infrastructure. Lagoon Street off of Main. It's a two-way street, underutilized as far as parking. If we have a sidewalk along the side Lagoon and Warren Street, we will add more parking. That area of town will look better. And if we were to make Lagoon Street a one-way street, just like Academy, with parking, angle parking in both sides, it will make Great Basin really happy. And it will allow for a lot more parking in the south end of town. And with sidewalks there, it'll be a lot better for people living in that mobile home park and off of Warren and on that end of town, that they can walk safely into other areas of town. So
Yeah.
I would like to throw it out there for Elaine and everybody else to think about it. What if Lagoon, it's a one-way street, just like Academy?
Yeah. And if we were to finish the sidewalks along Warren Street to at least there, then you have well, that's a safe route to school right there from the east side for everybody crossing at Clark.
Yes.
That'd be, yeah, I think that's a great idea.
When we get to the next subject, we have on that list, what I called pavement management. We probably should call that street improvement, but
Yeah,
Destin and I agree that when we do a street improvement project, that it won't only be the street. It'll also be curb and gutter and sidewalks
Yes.
improvements on anything that we take on. So,
And I
Um,
think, no,
go
I
ahead.
think that's great. And I think one thing to keep in mind with that is when we're doing these sorts of improvements, I believe it's since 2010, now we have to do a lot of ADA improvements to the sidewalks as well when you're dealing with any sort of pavement improvement.
just like we did on Warren Street.
Actually, I was told that Warren Street doesn't even meet the ADA requirements because something like every 40 or 60 feet, you need to have a wider area for turnarounds.
Yeah, ADA is a challenge, but when Ron was talking, and I think Stephen and I, Mayor Mahovey and I talked about was, now anymore, if you touch a street, you have to improve everything up to ADA standards on the sidewalks, curb ramps, so it all of a sudden takes away of just paving a street anymore, or adding a sidewalk on one side, the ramps, ADA driveways, which is fine. That's the right way to build it, but it also means you get to build a lot less footage for the same amount of money.
So, I mean, we haven't discussed housing much, but I think we all agree that that is a very top priority, and it's really complex in what we can do. But I hear that the other big priorities that we're looking at, we definitely want to be more proactive with regards to economic development. Of course, this past year was an anomaly in that we didn't even know what was going to happen to any sort of an economy. And then focus a lot more on our city offerings to the residents in the form of infrastructure and community services and those. And of course, as part of community services, the police department definitely falls in that. Fire department, of course, falls in that. And I mean, what are other big thoughts? I mean, there's of course public safety in the sense of the PD and EMS service, which you guys are actively working on, since that seems to be an area of need in our community. Any thoughts about that?
I guess, Stephen, my question would be, because I wasn't involved in this last year, how in depth are we, are we going to get in each one of these topics? Are we going to actually write out activities or tactics, as Karen called them, or are we just going to look overarching? I don't know how much farther to go.
We could do whatever we wanted to.
That's why I'm asking you.
Oh, I think it would be good. I think, so I had basically allotted about an hour to just have discussions, throw out ideas, and then I was and that was gonna, in 7 minutes, I was gonna move on to actually being more specific about how we wanna look at our expenditures in our increased budget. And I think out of that, we'll be able to actually define some specific items that we would hopefully see within the next year. And I think part of that, of course, is like, yeah, we're going to have a specific item, but then staff is going to have to go back and look at what kind of resources would be needed to get that particular item done. And then that, I think, when they'll be able to bring that back to us as they're formulating their budget for the next fiscal year. So I think that's kind of the approach that I was taking. Yeah. And so if we want to spitball other big ideas, or I still had a few minutes for that, or we can just move in directly into how we're looking at allocating the new funding that we should be getting this coming year.
May I ask Ron a quick question, Stephen?
Yeah, of course.
May I ask? So Ron, in your report that you sent out today, it said something about working with Pam and the courts about a regional dispatch center. Has things moved along in there? Because if we have here PD safety and stuff, is that moving along in a different way?
Well, we're just kind of in the initial stages of discussion of how that space will be used. The courts would like to have it all, but I think Pam is willing to discuss some shared space. We just, Josh and I are not sure if a regional dispatch center is going to happen or not. So we're kind of in a box here with the courts wanting to move ahead with taking over space once the sheriff's department moves out. And we don't know if we'll have any answers by that time on regional dispatch yet.
Okay.
There was a study that got commissioned on that. Did the study ever conclude?
We have an initial draft, and the 2 counties and 2 cities have made extensive comments, and we haven't seen the next iteration yet.
Okay.
Stephen, before you move on, can I address something that you brought up about the city park master plan?
Yeah, please.
So before Ron came on with David Kelly, I did sit and we came up with a strategic plan. Our master plan has been approved by City Council and it has been approved by DWP. It is a fluid document, as you guys know, and as our public changes or ideas change, it is something that we can alter in-house now, which is great. Dave Graw, before he left, put it in a PDF format for us. And Jana is pretty good at AutoCAD in the office as well. So with that, when we do our master plan, it is a living document and we can alter it to whatever our community wants and needs. But with that, I sat with David for quite a few hours one day and we basically built a strategic plan for what it would look like within 10 years to complete the park master plan. I don't know whatever became of that document, unfortunately, but it has been gone over and it has been talked about. We did put dollar amounts attached and timelines attached to everything with an action plan. So I'm going to do my best to research and find that for you guys, and we'll see what comes out of it. So thank you.
It would be, yeah, I mean, that sounds great. It'd actually be great if maybe you could give us a presentation at one of the council meetings on what the current master plan is and what would be the steps that need, and then basically the strategy to achieve it. That'd be awesome. Then we could see more feedback and see what we can do to help out with that for sure.
Once I locate everything, I'll get that and we can do that. Not a problem. So.
Thanks, Dan. One question, since we have been talking about cleanliness of sidewalks and of city streets and all of that stuff, is there any sort of do we think that actually having a citywide trash collection to improve that situation, would that improve or that situation or make it worse? Because I know, I mean, there is there are lots of people that end up collecting their trash and then taking it to the dump every few weeks. And then we have horrible windstorms, and that obviously, like, some of it gets strewn about town and gets exacerbated. I don't know. What do you guys think on that?
Can I chime in on that one?
Yes, please.
So I think, and probably going to get a bad mark by the community, but it's time we look at city driven, whether it's a franchise or whatever it is, but the city actually, and the county for that matter, manages trash collection and collects the bills and has mandatory collection. It's important because we're at the point where our landfill cannot keep up with their recycle numbers. So when you go to the mandatory, you have the blue, green, brown trash cans out in front of your house. They're separated that way. I think it would be a win-win for everybody, and it would eliminate just exactly what you're talking about, the people that don't like to go but once a month, and that's their choice. But it really feels like it's time to start looking in that direction.
I see some heads nodding.
Well, it's certainly an interesting thought, especially, sorry, the dogs are barking, especially because we just lost one of our trash operators, right? So now it's all funneled into just one option, which is what it is.
Yeah, Stephen, I think you're right. It's probably time. We've talked about it before. It's going to be politically an adventure. I know Destin can probably even speak to that. You're talking about change, and the one thing Bishop, they like all kinds of stuff except for change. And there's going to be some difficulty there getting that done. But, I agree with the concept. The reality is going to be a little more difficult. As far as the one trash provider, I think I met with their district manager recently in my other little world, and they're pretty proactive and they want to be pretty involved in the community. So that's at least a positive.
Yeah, and I mean, just to make it clear to any residents or viewers out there, any sort of service that the city provides, we are prohibited by law from making a profit. That is typically why, when it's done properly, your rates would end up going down with that sort of stuff. I don't know, maybe that's a thing to explore this year.
You gonna type it on the paper, Stephen?
Yeah, I will. Cleanliness.
And to make it clear, I was not making a judgment about the trash collectors, just noting that there was only one now.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, I think we have, it seems, is it really a useful exercise to to prioritize these ideas at this point? What do we think? Or why don't we do this? Why don't we go through what we kind of and discuss what we think, how we think we should allocate the increased funding that we should get this year from Measure P, and then after that we can just go through the individual departments and say what we would like their goal to be for this following year. Does that seem good? All right, so the voters in our town, obviously, they have confidence in us, which I think is I'm very humbled and grateful for that, because after all, we are here as public servants, and we're here to serve them, make sure our town is in good shape. And one of the things, and I gauge that by the fact that even during a pandemic, when things are tight for everybody, they approved a Measure P, which was the TUT increase, by a really large margin. It was, I believe, like 68-32. So it was a pretty wide majority. And so that is estimated to bring in about $1.5 to $1.8 million per year. And so I think now we wanted to have a discussion on how we think that that money, how we would allocate that. Ron, did you want to kick us off on this, or should we just have at it?
Well, I think it's probably pretty self-explanatory. These were the priorities that I thought worked as from an administrative standpoint, but politically you may have other thoughts and ideas for sure. So I think it's important to begin to, I don't think we have necessarily have to do it all in 1 year, but begin to catch up with our fund balance that we've had to spend because of lower revenues this year. One thing that I'm hearing is that the city may receive $700,000 plus from this 1.8 billion that Congress passed, which can help us replace some of the fund balance that we had to spend this year. But we will be bringing to you at some point a policy to discuss of what level that our fund balance should be. Should it be 20% of our annual budget? Should it be 25% of our annual budget? As a policy that would be adopted. Then I think, the employee furloughs have already been ended, so that's can be taken off the list. Fire department inspector is state mandated, and we're assuming at this point that will probably pay for itself. Chief Dell has a grant opportunity where we could possibly combine and cooperate with the county on a position that would be more or less a half-time fire department inspector combined with a county position. And we'll fill you in on that as we know more. We have, I think, and Destin, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think 3 positions in public works that need to be filled, and 1 additional police officer position that was on the books before the pandemic that was frozen. I think that we have extensive needs in the fire department for replacing old equipment and beginning to address that over time. The pavement management program, again, when I say street, I'm talking about street, sidewalks, and bike lanes and curb and gutter. So we could look at a certain level of funding for that, and that would have to be addressed over time. There's no way we could do it all in 1 year, of course. And I think we should have a repair and replacement fund where we take 2% a year of our budget and put it into a fund for deferred maintenance, so that when we have air conditioners or heaters that go out in City Hall or wherever and other kinds of things, that we have funds to replace that. Don't have to keep coming back to the city council to amend the budget. We need to address our unfunded liabilities. And I wouldn't suggest that we budget for that right now, but we're looking at options that we can bring to you to talk about how we address those. And then there's the housing, land acquisition, or encouraging owners with land that's either developed or undeveloped to build more housing, and then savings for future projects. So take that list and play with it, add to it, subtract from it, whatever you think is appropriate. If you have any questions, I'll be glad to address them.
Sure. No, I think that that's a good starting point for sure. I think that one can already be gone. This is a state requirement. So I guess we should definitely do something with that. I guess we're gonna be discussing what the fund balance, what we're gonna try and keep as a fund balance at a later date, right? Or did you want some sort of a direction now?
No, we need to analyze that and bring back a recommendation for you to discuss later, I think.
Okay. So we're gonna punt on this for now. Is that right? I mean, the way I see it, so I went through and I just kind of had a brainstorm of how much money to kind of allocate to different different areas, but I don't really want to bias people by just showing them what I have. But one of the things that I definitely had on there was a sidewalk. I guess we're calling it pavement management plan, which included streets, sidewalks. And one of the things in particular that I would love to see is, because we do have a lot of streets, especially in the east side of town, that say don't have sidewalks. And it would be, and it's of course not feasible to do. I believe Destin came up with an estimate of about 400,000 a year, or 400,000 for a full street, like say on the east side of town, which I think makes up for like 3-4 blocks, something like that. Correct me if I'm wrong.
I actually, Stephen, got the time to sit down and put together real hard numbers from the last bid. So you're looking at a city block, curb gutter, sidewalks, ramps, pavement, some trees, things like that. You're looking about per block, 300 feet, $225,000.
Yeah, about.
And that's based off the latest bids that we've had.
Right. So obviously, I think that definitely highlights that we wouldn't be able to do everything in one go, but I would love if we started to set aside maybe on order 25% of our increased revenue for that particular purpose. And if we don't spend it this year, then it builds up towards the next year, and then we can do a whole street type of stuff. So that's one of the things that I kind of feel strongly about with the Measure P money.
And one last thing I'd like to add is, we get about $70,000 to $75,000 a year of gas tax, just for projects, and it can be saved for up to 3 years too in banks. So we could add that to that number.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So let's say, the number that I had thrown on there was 300 for that. But I think we all kind of, so like in the 20 to 25% block of the increased funding. The other big ticket item that I had kind of put in for that money is for the last many decades, or for the last many years, we have neglected a lot of our infrastructure in the fire department. And even this past year, we had agreed to actually contribute to the capital improvement fund with the rural fire district, and then with the pandemic, we backpedaled on that. And so I really do think that that should be one of the other priorities of the new funding. What do you guys think?
Definitely.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And then, like I mentioned earlier, I would advocate we actually set aside probably like 15 to 20%, 15% to a housing / like economic or downtown improvement fund, where as part of that fund, we would start setting aside money in that fund, and that fund would, we could use it for, to assist with a first-time homebuyer program, and to have funds to be able to help building owners improve their buildings, because we keep finding that that's one of the bigger concerns of people with buildings on Main Street. And if that fund, and then as that fund grows enough, that could be where we take money to purchase properties from DWP.
So I think it would be interesting to have a discussion about this in a big picture, maybe from Dean at some point, about what legally we can set aside, and if we can combine all those things into one fund, or if we're going to need to have separate funds for, I don't know enough about it to know if legally we can even put all that money together and then use it for different purposes, or if we're going to need to have separate funds for housing versus building purchase versus land purchase or whatever. So I would agree that a fund like that needs to be set, and just how that happens is beyond me.
Steven, and you said that you were thinking about 10 to 15%?
Mm-hmm. 15%.
25 to 30%.
Okay.
And this is of the Measure P money, not of the general fund.
Yes,
Right.
This is just a Measure P money. Yeah. And so what I had originally said was on order 20% for the pavement management. I had said, and of course, this is just me throwing numbers out there. Actually, I think I had said, and of course, I'm just throwing numbers here, and these aren't meant to be in stone. And we should, of course, be, this is a discussion. We're just discussing.
Well, I mean, I think we could say to staff, we want, a quarter of this money to be dedicated towards like housing initiatives. And then they can come back to us with, they're the experts and they can come back and say, all right, these are all of the different options that you guys have to achieve the goal of more housing. And whatever those options are, we can then discuss and execute.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think it's a good point. I would love to see, because I do think that one of the things that will have a great impact on our community, especially as we're, knock on wood, coming out of the pandemic, summer's hitting, things, we've all been like kind of locked away for quite a while, and actually just really have more events over the summer and centered at different locations around town, and just, reconnect with your neighbors once the pandemic's over. So I think that would fall kind of on in community services, kind of event planning stuff. I don't know. And I think we could definitely allocate some funds to actually make that happen.
So I guess my question is, I think that we have to be really careful when we're looking at this money. The citizens voted for us to take this money and do stuff with it. And so I think we need to have, we can justify the catch-up money, we can justify the fire EMS bill, we can justify the, saving for future projects and pavement. But I think that the citizens are going to want to see stuff as well, right? That we need to have some sort of balance between we're saving this for later and for maybe buying a property later, and look what we're doing with this money. And so yeah, maybe that community service kind of dollars could be upped a little bit more from my perspective, and so that they can say, oh look, they're providing for us stuff from the money that we said they could.
I agree. Yeah.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
I would like to, I know I've had this talk before, and you're looking at a number, probably if you're throwing percentage numbers out, 10% of this number. And I'd like to actually see us make a strategic move along Karen Schwartz's lines of moves that make a difference, and hire, it's going to be a brand new hire, a planner to supplement Elaine. Elaine does an amazing job. Her stack of stuff to do is this tall, and it just keeps growing. The more we sit here and talk, the more that stack is even growing. But I'd like to see us make a strategic move, hire a planner to supplement her, work with her. I don't care how they work together, but to accomplish more, to find the grants. It's great that we find grants, but we don't have the time, money, resources to actually do anything with them. So I'd like to see us look at that idea, make an investment in our community, make investment in our future, that if we hire someone, they can get stuff done, they can get the housing thing serious, they can reach out to companies to take advantage of the opportunity zone. I know in the many talks I've had with all of you, we have the needs, we have great ideas. How do we incorporate them? How do we get them moving forward at a quicker pace? And especially in the world that we're in, we're getting a new airport. People are moving here like crazy. The fire is burning, and we have to start attack this and be quick about it. Otherwise, we'll get run over.
I mean,
Jim, Stephen, if may I?
Yeah.
Jim, do you think this area is something we can partner with the town of Mammoth Lakes, Mono County, or Inyo County for that matter? Because I believe at least Mammoth Lakes has a grant writer. And if Inyo, Mono County have a full-time planner or grant writers, is this something we can partner with both of them or all of them, since they may already have the experience in this type of area, grant writing and things like that.
I think you could always try to do that, depending on what the benefits are. If you're gonna, the investment, if it pays off and can pay for itself, great. But I think that the people out there, the new upcoming generation, these people coming out of college with these degrees in planning, in development, and economic development, we can get some, I hate to say young person, because someone Steven's age. Yeah, you're the young guy. Find someone out there who's aggressive, who's in touch with the new socioeconomic period that we're coming into, it's coming to Bishop. Find someone in touch with that who takes us to that next level and can get us the best bang. If we can incorporate that with Mammoth or work with Mammoth, work with Inyo County, great. But I don't think that needs to be the focus needs to be, can it be done? Is it worth the investment? Is it something that will pay for what it costs? Will we see the return on that investment?
Well, Jim, I think that we could be less specific, and we could say to staff, like, we want to see these things done. And if hiring a planner is the way to get these things done, then we're open to it. But I also would want to give staff sort of this like broad view of like, this is what we want to get done. We want to allocate funds towards it. Give us the strategy to get there, instead of saying, we think the strategy is hiring a planner. I want to be a bit more broad and say, we're open to all of the different ideas. And if hiring an additional person makes sense, because we do have some vacant positions and maybe we shift it around, come back to us with what you think is the most, the best way to achieve what we want to see done, instead of telling them how to get it done.
Well, I'm not demanding that we hire someone that we get stuff done. I'm saying, as we sit here talking now and looking at a list, we have plenty to do.
No, I know, but remember when David Kelly was here, we put on like the list, like hire a planner. And then we had that, we even flew the position. And now, like, in looking back, I'm like, like maybe we should give them all the tools, because I think we've discussed that. I do think hiring a planner is a good idea, but I also want to empower the staff to be like, well, what are, maybe there's ideas that they don't have, that we haven't heard of, that might get us to our goal without hiring a planner. I don't know. I'm just saying,
sure,
come back to us with the strategies.
And we have Alta. We have what come next year. The report's going to be back on what our downtown specific plan is, our strategic plan, where we need to go to get to where we're talking, Karen. We've talked for years now about kind of trying to put it all together. It's getting there. I want to be ready when it gets there, that here's what we need to do to get to where we want to be.
Right.
If we we have the person in place to help us get there. And yeah, I trust staff to get where we need to go to talk about it. But I do think that it's important that we have, I love Elaine. I think Elaine does an amazing job, but can two Elaines do an even twice as amazing job to get us places, to get, as a business comes in, this person and Elaine split the two full plates into each, they only have a plate. Can we get more done?
Sure.
Yeah,
and we're open to it. Yeah.
And I mean, if we look at like so many of the items here, definitely have to just like come up with that would fall under planning and would fall all under Elaine's current really long hyphenated title. And so, yeah, I mean, I think allocating a fraction of that money to planning, economic development, and then staff decides, okay, what would be the best use for this? How is it hiring another person? Is it contracting for something? Whatever it may be. I think that makes sense.
One thing I wanted to mention about the pavement management is that, correct me if I'm wrong, Destin, but it was my understanding that the property owner is responsible for paying for the sidewalk, even if the city kind of mandates it. Is that accurate?
Actually, what happens is if they don't touch it and they do nothing in front of their house, it's fine the way it is. We
Right.
can't, you know, so unless they want to make improvements, then yes, it has to be brought up to city standards at they pay for it. But, you know, it's been a long time since really anybody's done it, since we've been successful with probably 8 or 10 big projects in the last 20 years. And so it's really slowed down property owners doing anything themselves because, you know, why do I do it when the city's going to pay for it sooner or later?
Right. And so what I was getting at was if there are motivated property owners on like a specific block, maybe they would want to pitch in for materials and the city is the one that does the work, you know, and it could come in at a less expensive cost. But it's, you know, maybe it was Jim Tatum that told me, but that was, or maybe it was Dave Graw, but that maybe the city has done the labor and the property owner pays for the materials. But I didn't know if there was something we could look at in, you know, if that's a opportunity to look at, if there is like a, you know, maybe a block of property owners that are like, we want a sidewalk all right here.
Yeah, and yeah, absolutely. That we have a sidewalk safety program that if somebody has bad sidewalk or no sidewalk at all, the city does all the removal work, brings back in the base. They just hire a contractor to pour and finish concrete. They don't do any of the prep work, that type of stuff. But definitely the sidewalk safety policy could be enhanced if we had money in it, because we used to even have a curb and gutter subsidy program that at least helped pay for part of that sidewalk. And then we just haven't had the funds, the general fund to do that kind of stuff, but we do now. I think it's exciting because people have been, you're right, people are willing to do the work. You know, they want to help out, they just can't pay for all of it. But if you had a whole block ready to do it and we have the funding, it'd be great to do that. I think it's a great idea.
I think it's also, I also think it's a great idea. I think it's a win-win situation for the city, for the homeowners, and I'm sure that there will be a lot of homeowners motivated to contribute and getting it done. So I like that idea.
Yeah, I think that's great. What are we at here? Are there any other areas that we kind of want to direct the increased funding?
Well, I think we should talk about our vacant positions, you know, and how, you know, we have one position being flown for police officer, but to get us to a full department, we would need another position to be flown. And so we should make that decision so the police chief, you know, knows what his department's going to look like instead of living in a limbo of whether or not we're going to pull the hiring freeze or not. And then if we're talking about, you know, adding some positions, are there 3 positions that are vacant in Public Works? Is it 3?
So there's actually only 2 vacant.
2 vacant, okay. And, you know, whether or not, do we want to fill those? What does that look like? Should one of those be a planner? You know, I don't know enough about how you operate the Public Works Department, but I think that that could be a conversation in the overall big picture of how we spend our money.
Yeah.
I guess one of my questions with regards to that is that those 3 positions were typically already included in our budget when it was a healthy budget. And I thought the discussion we were having now is what were we going to do with the increased budget that we would end up getting?
on the list, fill vacant positions.
It is on his list. Yeah, I mean, I guess I was kind of viewing this exercise as more of what would we want to do with the increased fund as opposed to the regular budget discussion, which is coming up in a month or two. What do you?
Mr. Mayor,
Yeah.
I think that my thought was that we may not be back to our normal budget levels initially for this next fiscal year. We don't know. We need to do some thinking and some projections on revenue and whether we think we'll be at that level we were in the year prior to the current fiscal year. So that's why I put them in this list, was to go ahead and fill the vacant positions. And then as we come back to full strength, we can add other things at the tail end of the list.
Stephen, I like us to focus on this additional funding for the things that are needed, services, improvements. I understand there are some positions that need to be filled. I agree that that should be part of the regular budget, and if we are not going to, we are not going to be back to our regular budget in this next cycle. It's probably going to take at least 2 years, maybe even more. Hopefully not, but maybe even more to get back to the budget and funding that we had 2 years before COVID. Vacant positions can be filled in incrementally. If a department has 3 vacant positions, maybe next year 1, but as part of the regular budget, not as part of this additional funding. I like to see this additional funding be dedicated to these areas that we have identified, not going to fill in the vacant positions.
Let me comment real quick. As far as the vacant position for the police department, we are, it's important, it's critical, but one of the issues we have, if we don't keep up with it, we have retirements coming. And as these retirements come over the next several months, well, 6 to 8 months, and then within that following year, if we don't keep up with our positions, once we hire people getting through training, we're going to continue to be extremely behind, causing this to be a multi-year issue for the police department. With this being sold as partially as a safety measure, it would definitely fill that void. It would help us maintain our minimum staffing so that we don't get to the point we are now and then continue to regress.
Do we have a sense? So how many people are currently on the staff?
Police department?
Yeah.
We're down 2 positions. We've flown it. We're having, it's still open. We're still trying to recruit some qualified applicants. It's challenging. Everybody is being challenged by finding qualified applicants, even the local agencies around us. And so for us to have these positions available, unfrozen, so we can continue to push forward on trying to fill, it's going to be very, very important. So we're down 2 right now, total.
And how many do we expect to become vacant with retirements?
We have 1 person that is planning to retire by September, and another one within the next 11 months.
So
Josh,
one
what's-
in a year. Okay.
Josh, what's the true training time on an officer when they're incredibly, not incredibly, but capable of doing the job, know the city, know the people, know the system?
Once they're hired, it's a minimum requirement of 12 weeks of training for their field training program. So if they're if we have a new officer and they are doing well, they're high speed, 12 weeks. And if they need some additional help, it could be 14, 16 weeks to get them through the whole program.
So the one that we're floating right now would effectively come on and be ready. Well, let's say whenever we hire them, they need to be hired by June so that there's no break with the one who's retiring in September. And then for the one that's retiring in 11 months, to replace them, we would need to have somebody hired by November. Am I following that right?
It's a general time frame. And that's assuming we're hiring somebody that's a lateral, that's already in the academy. If that's the challenge, those people are hard to come by right now. We may have to start exploring sending somebody to the academy. And if that were to happen, you're looking at roughly a year from hire date till when they're on their own. So I know the sheriff's departments, they're looking for bodies, the district attorney's office and us as well. So we're all having a hard time trying to find lateral officers.
So Josh, Stephen's timeline was to fill those two people that will be retiring, but that in your book, we're still then 2 down after that.
Correct.
I think one of the things that we need to figure out is the 2 different philosophies, right? Are we going to still work at a budget that's not where it was and do new things, or are we going to use this money initially to get the budget to where it was and then add the new things as we move forward? I don't know that we've even decided those 2 things yet.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. What's your take on it?
I think my take is, like I said earlier, we need to do a little bit of both. We need to be able to show that we're doing stuff as well as do the stuff that's super important to get us on solid financial ground to start with.
Yes, I agree, Karen. And I also think we should go back to the minutes. What did City Council promise the constituency when they requested this 1% in additional funding in the tax? We cannot say, okay, now we're going to be spending this money in this and forget what City Council promised 6-9 months ago. We need to be fiscally responsible. And I'm not saying don't spend any money, don't hire anybody. I'm just saying let's focus on the greater picture. How do we want to see Bishop to be like in 5, 10, 15 years? So it's a challenge. I know. We all know that. So.
Well, one of the things we were extremely concerned about was completely cutting services to a bare minimum and what that would look like. And fortunately, it did not get to that point. But I do really think that we need to at least get the police department back to a place of full service so they can operate in a position where that's where they think they're doing. It's hard to I would think, I'm not a police chief, to manage a department not knowing whether or not you can hire people. So I would think that you would want to get to a place of, okay, we're going to get the police department back on track. And then if we want to have a strategic discussion about how much we want to spend on public safety, then we can have that discussion, you know, moving forward. But getting ourselves whole, I think, is what we had promised to our constituents.
I mean, yeah, that's a good point. So, I mean, I guess we're talking about, so are we lifting the complete hiring freeze, or are we just asking for, like you just said, or prior with regards to planning, of asking for feedback of what it is that is needed to do that particular job, right?
Right. I mean, I think we could get, you know, feedback, but, you know, that's on the list is the hiring freezes, and, you know, going to staff and being like, what, you know, we want to provide the services that we promise to the people. What does that look like? I don't know if Josh can run a police department with the current staff he has, or if it, I mean, the conversation I've had with him is no, he needs to prevent overtime. He needs a full force. But I do think we all, at least I want to have a conversation in the future of how much do we want to be spending, you know, on public safety with fire and police altogether. But I don't think that's the conversation now. I think the conversation now is, you know, should we get whole?
If I'm not mistaken, I think right now we're spending more than 60% on safety. And if we add fire, maybe more than 70% of the city's budget goes to safety. Adding another 10% out of this additional funding is going to reduce the services or the resources for other areas. I'm not set on these percentages that we have listed, 20, 25, but yeah, can we dedicate 10% of this additional funding to safety? Probably. We already have 25 for fire and EMS. Maybe we can do 20 on fire EMS and 10, 15 to safety. But I understand the department being short-staffed and probably even more with these retirements and the challenge in recruiting. But we need to be fiscally responsible. We cannot just dedicate more resources to safety. And I'm not pointing fire police department. I'm just saying to safety. We need to focus on all areas.
Mr. Mayor, if I might, for just 2 seconds. Sorry to interrupt this train of thought. One is I wanted to tell council I'm going to be going in about 10 minutes. I have to catch a plane. The other is, Mr. Mayor, because this is kind of a run on a subject and we're not going by agenda item, there are a raised hand for public comment. So however you want to handle that issue, I would just watch the raised hands and Jenny can admit it whenever you're ready.
I can't see the participants because I'm sharing my screen. But I think there was a raised hand from Jim.
It looks like Anthony has his hand raised. I don't know if we want to tell Jen to promote him now or what.
Jen?
I will allow him to talk. Anthony, you're allowed to talk now.
Thank you. I just wanted to say that I'd like to push for more bike paths. I think because that was included in the voter guide under Measure P. I think this would help us meet our climate equity goals, and that I think that it would be good for the public health of the community because more people would be walking. Could help us move away from automobile dependence, and it could reduce the need for parking, which would reduce emissions, and it would also let us have more room for housing if we didn't have to have such big parking lots. Thank you.
For sure. Thanks for your comment. And yeah, anything that is also going into pavement management would definitely double with especially bike paths. But yeah, it's a very good point.
Mayor Mahovey.
Yes.
Just, I think we all need to recognize that our policy for current level of service for the police force is based on a certain level of employees, police officers and so on. That if we're not going to spend resources to fill those positions, then Josh and I need to bring back to you a changed policy for a lesser level of service in police services. We can't just say, oh, we're not going to fill those positions. I mean, they've been filling them by people not taking vacation, and as we got into further into the pandemic, with people being sick and so on, of paying more overtime. So there's a balancing act between the level of service you expect and how many officers we have on staff that needs to be addressed.
That's a good point. Jim, you had your hand raised.
Yeah, I think I'd like to thank Josh. I think he's the report he did a few weeks ago or a month ago was great. It kind of gave us a good picture. And again, thank you, Josh, for what you brought to us today with, I guess, the future of what the staff is looking like. To get behind on this, I think is critical. The 60% number you said, Jose, look at budgets from around the state. We fall right in line with what it costs to run, what municipalities pay for law enforcement. It's just part of the business. And I think it's an investment we need to. I think, Josh, you're on the right track that we need to stay on top of this, because if we get behind, it comes back to us. If once our city, I think when this COVID, I looked today when I was down in Independence, there were people everywhere, stopped at every gas station. The gates are opening, and I do think that when this pandemic is coming to an end, the gates are opening. We're going to see an increase in people here, an increase in visitors, an increase in, there's always crime that goes with an increase, doesn't even have to be crime. It could be the traffic accidents. It could be the just stuff that happens that our police department does kind of keep in check. So I think it's critical. I'm going to leave it at that. I'm not going to beat this up because I think it's something we do have to have for a future discussion, but I think it's an investment in our community that our citizens expect. And it does provide safety net for people themselves, but economically too. It keeps our town strong.
Stephen?
Yes.
I think that what needs to happen is that if this is the level of staffing that is on the books as a normal level of staffing, then we should fill the position if possible. With the retirement of the 2 people upcoming, it gives us a window of time to do the discussion about public safety and about what we want to see from our police department and what we think the spending is, because we can still have our full staff, not have Ron and Josh relook at what they're offering right this second, fill the job, and then in preparation for these 2 retirements coming up in the next 8 months or so, have the discussion about public safety. I do not, however, think that we should get rid of the hiring freeze. It's one thing to fill positions that are already on the books. It's another thing to get rid of the hiring freeze. So those are 2 separate discussions.
Sure. I mean, I think those are all valid points. One thing, and I guess this is the discussion might be veering off a little bit. I just want to point out one thing to you, Jim, that yes, you might talk about 60% of the budget going into public safety, but when we look at per resident, the average amount that per resident in cities in the state of California is between $150 and $300, and we're currently at about 900. So just another bit of information there.
And we'll go back to your letter you just wrote. I mean, the people that live here are not the people that police department services.
Sure. Yeah. No, that's a good point.
Mayor Mahovey, if I could just comment. The way we interpreted the term hiring freeze was a freeze on those positions that were on the books that we did not fill. We were not referring to a hiring freeze of new positions. It's just those that are on the books now that we decided not to fill until we could afford to fill them.
So, I mean, I think what I'm advocating for is that once we get more final numbers, I guess I was under the assumption that those positions would automatically be around when our general budget was back to normal, and that this wasn't, and that would already be included in the original general budget stuff. I guess the discussion where it's veered off to is whether we're going to lift those particular hiring freezes and rely on the extra revenue that's coming in. I mean, I don't think it's an appreciable amount of the new stuff. Correct me if I'm wrong.
I don't believe it is.
Jim?
Hey, Mayor Mahovey and council, would it be, I mean, I think we've talked about this a little bit. You're right, we veered off everywhere. Would it be okay to maybe, I think the staff has all been listening. They've been watching us do our thing. Would it be possible for them to, would we maybe be at a point where let them go and come up with the dream list and present it to us of what stuff would cost, that they kind of see what the council is thinking. Let them come up with a dream list, bring it back to us with actual numbers, then we can see, well, okay, Destin, you're asking for 42% of this number. I doubt that Destin will ask for that, but whatever number he comes up with, it gives us a place now to play instead of just talking about it. You guys bring us what your thoughts are, what the cost would be, what out of this money, what do you guys look for per year for what? And I think to touch on Karen, I think we can talk about a bunch of stuff, but give us specific items, specific numbers, and let us then pick and choose a little bit.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea.
Even one more comment I'd like to make is that I like to become familiar with that policy Ron mentioned about the level of service from the police department. So if we can have that available to go over.
Sure, I think Josh, did you sent that out recently?
The study, yes.
Yeah.
You can resend it as well.
Yeah, just do that.
Thank you.
May I ask one more question just for clarification?
Yeah.
Ron, the list that you made, assuming that we're not going to touch any of that list, how much of a percentage do you think of the new money coming in will that list of yours take up? You know what I mean?
Yeah, it would take more than what we have.
Okay.
Okay.
That's a very good clarifying point.
So just to kind of, I know at this point staff is going to be looking over this and trying to like discern what some of the direction was. So I want to actually try a little exercise for the last segment of our meeting, if that's okay, where we have, whoops, where was this? I just listed out all of the departments. And I think it'd be useful if we were to kind of just say what are some of the things that we'd like each department to focus on in the next year. And then I think that will help them guide how they establish their budget and all of that sort of stuff. What do you guys think? Bye, Dean. We won't break too many laws.
Stephen, could you share both documents, like what we just were looking at, in addition to this new department goals? Because I think they're.
I don't know.
If not, that's okay.
I can flip back and forth. So, well, not this one, right? So basically, this was where we were writing down some notes on housing, infrastructure, public safety, but
maybe you could just cut and paste that one and put it below or something. I don't know.
Yeah, let's do that. That's a good idea. This is a lot smaller. All right, so what do we think admin should be focusing on in the next year? Other, like something that maybe we haven't done in the past, or where we're kind of summarizing some of this stuff.
And I think just getting the most bang for our buck, managing our budget in the best way possible.
That falls in fine. Yeah, true.
For opportunities to, save money or put money in different funds that make sense. I just think that that's one of a really important part of the city administrator's job, is to make sure we are spending our money wisely. And we don't have to be, it doesn't have to be always like frugal, but more like, okay, if we, when I was talking to Ron about unfunded liabilities, he said he's been exploring options of different interest rates that we might be looking at with where our money is going. So just being smart and savvy.
Mm-hmm. There is one thing that has kind of bitten us in the past, and that's been that we're small enough that we don't really have, like, for a while we had deficiency in, say, human resources and kind of a grievance program. And I know Jana has taken up some of that, but are we content with how that's going, or do we, especially those who have been on the council for longer, like, do we see that that's something we want to kind of focus on an improvement for the future?
Like update the program. I think we're doing the thing. I think we talked about it in the council with the employee evaluations or department head evaluations. I think having Jana in place now, I think we're, compared to where we were a couple of years ago, we have processes in place. So I think we need to keep up on that. If anything, Stephen, I think, and council can chime in, either have someone from the outside or even Ron or internally, look at all our systems, make sure that we're in line in training, whether it's sexual harassment training, grievance, whatever the training is, make sure that we're in the right spot. So that's probably why I would want us to see at least some focus.
I'm not advocating for this, and I actually don't know, I don't think we need it, but I will just put it out there is, Jim, you know this, but ESTA went through they hired a consultant to do an evaluation of like the organization and just how everything was working and all the processes. And it really helped the executive director at the time to just, focus on some things that were lacking, which were some systems in place and their computer safety protocol. The consultant was like, oh my gosh, you have nothing, that everything is very vulnerable in their protocols. It just kind of found some holes in the system. And I don't know if we need that, but it is an option that ESTA went through and it proved to be valuable.
And I would probably agree with you, Karen. It for us to look in is one thing, but for someone from outside to look in, they see the stuff that we just don't see because it's normal. We don't see the changes that need to be made. We just see that we're working. So yeah, that would be probably something to look into. Not in a bad way. Not if everything's great in the city and we're doing everything perfect, then great. But if they point out a few things here and there that we don't see, then money well spent.
I agree with that.
Okay. Karen Kong, did you have anything?
Yeah, I along the same vein, it would really be nice, it seems to me, that because I heard every city manager has been talking about doing it, looking at our public policies and seeing, if they're in a place that they should be. I know signage is the best option I can think of, is that, it's very vague and it's kind of willy-nilly. And so it might be nice to take a peek at that and see not just signage, but all of our policies and see where they land as far as, when they were last updated and if they need to be changed and looked at for a safety for ourselves or for safety for the residents or whatever. Concreteness.
Sure. Okay. What do we think about goals we want for finance department? I think, Karen, you just mentioned one is look at ways of lowering our unfunded liability payments. I would actually advocate start looking at like a 5 or 10 year projection of what of the health of our budget for 5 or 10 years from now. Because of course, one of the things to bear in mind as we go and hire new people is that we do have amazing benefits, and it's not just the cost of paying for them at the present time. It is a cost that gets incurred for a long period, and actually getting some sort of a sense from that. What do you guys think about that?
I think that actually makes sense.
And then, yeah.
I also think it might be nice if every department took sort of and maybe they do this all the time and I don't know it because I just got here, but took some sort of big picture thought process. Okay, our computers are going to last this much longer and our cars are going to last this much longer, and so that we can, when we're doing that 5 to 10 year budget outlook, we can put those pieces in as well.
Any particular goals for community services? I think we want more activities.
I don't, this is kind of a pie in the sky, and this is based off an article that I read. that cities bigger than ours are doing, but they are promoting big, and I don't even know if we want to do this, I'm just going to put it out there, but they're promoting big tournaments, you know, so kids will come and do like a big baseball tournament, or they'll do a big, you know, soccer tournament, and that just generates, you know, it's kind of like having the high school rodeo here. It's a win-win, but I don't know. And I know, like for soccer, I've talked to AYSO. I guess we don't have enough fields to host like a similar type tournament that Carson City has. But it could be a goal, you know, if we wanted to be a destination for some of these types of sporting events. I know it's a strategy that other cities have looked at to bring families in for a weekend. Whether or not that's somewhere we want to go, I don't know, but I'm full throttle in sports right now. So it's like front of mind, and it's, you know, it's fun. It's fun to go to a new place when COVID's over and do a weekend tournament somewhere. And if that could bring in revenue, that's not just, you know, from the normal tourist revenue, but it could come during some of our off-season times. It might be something to help with the increased revenue if we want to go there. It's just an idea.
Karen Schwartz.
Yes.
Why don't we organize a half a marathon run?
Definitely. If that's another, it's a great, yeah, those types of things are really, they're fun, and they generate revenue. Yeah.
They do.
Yeah.
In every way, people come in to run, they have to stay at a hotel, TOT taxes and cell taxes and everything.
So I don't know if like an idea, I mean, a run or more fields for hosting teams, whether or not that's even, but that's long-term.
And I guess for me, the idea that we have more stuff to provide for afternoon, evening, and weekend stuff for families to do that live here, that are not maybe in the socioeconomic realm to be traveling to go have fun and, you know, at Disneyland or wherever, whatever's going to be open at some point, and to have stuff that here for them to do would be great.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, and I mean, it would be great if you guys could, I don't know, come up with something so that when COVID's over, we can start having a lot more events in neighborhoods for the for just to have everybody reconnect.
Block parties.
Yep. Oh, it's listed as a department in our budget. Sunrise Mobile Home Park. I think there's some work that needs to be done there on pavement, right?
Yeah, we're looking for grant funds to make some improvements with the water system and the pavement, for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Dustin, you may have more to say.
Yeah, the Public Works crew was actually over there quite often anymore, because that asphalt's is 40 years old now, and who lives there but people that need help walking, walkers, wheelchairs, and there's just big cracks. It's a real issue, and we go through, fix a bunch, and 2 weeks later, you know, it's at the point where it needs to be repaired, and it's a big ticket item, and maybe it's part of something we use with our new tax, because I think the asphalt alone is about $200,000 to replace that properly in there. But it's at that point where we got to make some decisions on it. And I know it's not my pavement, it's that, but it's ours.
Mm-hmm. I think we had a lot of items for planning. Elaine's just smiling.
Can I back up just for a second, Stephen?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd like to put under admin, sort of like high level negotiations. That at some point, you know, when planning gets done or whatever, that admin's going to have to step in to help with those sort of high level things.
Okay. Yeah. Like you mean once we have a specific plan actually like devising how to implement it type of stuff? Or
Sorry, the dogs are barking. So, you know, like with DWP or with Mammoth Mountain or with Forest Service or whatever.
makes sense. I think, yeah, one of the things that we wanted to look at for the planning department was look at more, I mean, a lot of this falls under we've listed up here in the sense of like, I guess here's a question, right? I mean, we mentioned how a lot of buildings need improvements to get up to code. But I mean, do we have any specifics that we can do to help out with that? And does that fall in like planning department?
Well, there's quite a bit happening now already. The Jack in the Box went through quite a enhancement project on their property. We have the Joseph's Market that's being completely renovated. The building where the restaurant's going in across from the bank is being totally redone inside. So there's some of this happening naturally with new businesses taking the reins and running with it.
Jim?
And how do you help property owners with it not being like a gift of public funds, you know, or like, I guess it would have to be some sort of like grant program or something that was not, you know, like I just don't know. I mean, I'm all for upgrading buildings. I just want to make sure that it's not a gift of public funds. Yes, and that's it. Yeah.
Jim?
To touch on that, and to answer Karen's question, I think that's where we need to look at an investment. I know we've had business improvement loans available before, but if you want to actually make that happen, we have money coming in, 1.8 million, 1.5 million. If we take a percentage of that and make it available to businesses at that much percentage rate for a period of 3 years, 5 years, 2 years, pick a number, we invest in them to invest in themselves. So for the infrastructure repairs in these businesses to bring them up to code, yeah, we're not going to give you the money, but we'll let you use it at 0% interest to make your business now work, make the city more profitable.
Maybe that's something where we would work with like a local bank, you know, like that is in the business of lending, but we could partner. There must be programs out there, but that's a good idea.
So maybe we put that as one of the planning priorities. Figure this out for us.
I guess that would fall under plan for implementation of whatever they recommend. Elaine, you can sign language. No, all we hear is a buzzing sound. Yeah, I mean, what makes it really challenging, right, is in many cases, we don't even know what the state of those buildings are. And there's no centralized place to actually know what it is. And I know one of the challenges that has definitely happened with regards to economic development is that inevitably some investors will reach out to the city and ask what's available. And we, by law, cannot refer them to any to an individual realtor. Like we can just give them the list of everything, and then it's entirely on them to reach out to every single one of them to find out what's available and what's not. And yeah, and that I think is one of the things where we could help, but I don't know that there's the will for that. So, I mean, there are definitely a bunch of items in planning. Any particular focus areas of focus we want the PD to focus on? I love how Josh has taken the approach of doing more community policing. And I think that would be, I mean, it's been really hard, especially with COVID, but now that we're coming out of that, I would love to see more of those sorts of efforts. Anyone else?
I think we got to support Josh in updating the technology. I know he's talked about the MDTs and that. I think there's another place we need to focus on is keeping up with the technology that's available to make their job better and the public safer.
I don't know if this is feasible because I know you need 2 police officers together, but I do like seeing police officers on foot, you know, not always in their patrol car. And I know that there's logistics around that, but as a higher arching goal, it's nice just seeing them, you know, out and about.
And then, of course, the biggest, the repeated complaints we keep getting are with regards to speeding in town. It seems like.
Yeah, radar signs.
Okay, any particular direction to fire? I think, well, we have a plan coming up, right?
Yes. Joe had to respond to it on a call, so he's off the call here.
Then a lot of things fall in public works. We want to see a plan for beautifying the sidewalks and pavement and incorporating bike traffic. I'd love to see, I mean, I really like that idea of making Lagoon kind of one way at that turnoff. It'd be great to see the feasibility of that.
Stephen, can we have Destin put together a list, almost a fantasy list of what items do they need, such as, I mean, we have aging equipment as far as backhoes and loaders and stuff. What's out there? Maybe like a fantasy list. Would a Bobcat help one guy do the work of 3 guys and make efficiency? Is there what would be his ideas to help us get to the next level to be more efficient?
Bring me a ball. Sorry, puppy biting my foot.
Sorry. I don't have a ball with me right now.
Sorry, puppy biting my shoes.
Jim, yes, I agree with the equipment. And I think we should ask every department to do the same thing.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's been pretty comprehensive.
As part of that sidewalk management plan, it would be nice to have a sort of just a rundown of what streets don't have sidewalks. Right? Where, you know, we got 10, we got 12, we got 45, what?
Yes.
And in addition to that, maybe where we could put in some bike paths, you know, some additional bike routes.
Councilman Swartz, would that be bike routes off of the streets or on normal city streets?
I think both, you know, like if you could do a combo.
Okay.
I think Anthony made a really good point saying that on the streets would be like, would, at least as far as I'm concerned, be the number one thing to look at as far as bike paths. So people could choose to bike to work instead of drive.
And I agree. And it'll take some work and it would take a lot of public buy-in because our streets are only 40 feet wide. So you got to have 12-foot lane to 8-foot parking. It would require either the parking to give or potentially making the sidewalks narrower and moving the curbs back 5 feet because we do have 60 feet total. So I agree with you. I think it's a great idea. It's just how do you work it in with the little narrow right-of-ways we have?
Right. And making the sidewalk narrow, of course, then you start falling into ADA compliance concerns. So, yeah.
It's all right.
And Stephen, add if this is a list, the Main Street sidewalk cleanliness.
And I think that, I mean, maybe we should explore like some sort of BTID with Caltrans, you know, but that could be, I don't know if there's a will from the business owners, but you definitely pay into some sort of fund that the city then manages. And that's one option. And it could contribute to that type of thing. More flowers, more, you know, just a bunch of stuff like that.
Was there anything else we wanted to discuss? Anyone from the public?
No hands are raised.
Then Ron, I think I'll throw it back to you if you have any more questions, concerns, etc. Bring them up.
I don't believe we do, but we really appreciate this, the time you've taken to go through all of these items and to give us direction for budgeting. We'll do our best to come back with our best understanding of your desires and wishes and what we can do with the resources we have available. But this has been a great exercise and we appreciate it.
Then thanks everyone. Thanks everybody for taking some of your Friday afternoon off. I think we had it 4 hours allocated. Are you guys okay with ending an hour and a half early? All right, then I'll adjourn this meeting until next Monday at 6 o'clock. Thanks, everyone.